To begin with, we'd like to acknowledge that we are on the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of New Credit, the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, and we thank them for hosting us on their land today and every day of the year. The film is eligible for the Canada Goose Award for Best Canadian Feature Film, the Grosh People's Choice Award, and the Grosh People's Choice Documentary Award. So you can vote for your favorite films at tiff.net/vote. We'd like to thank Time-Lapse Pictures Productions for providing us with the film. And we're really excited to present this today. This is a really visually stunning take on the narratives that countries construct about themselves, and in this case, often how competing those narratives can be. Igor's frame is meditative and astute. The wide shots of various tourist sites are captivating tableaus that feel almost like a stage, except all of the performers are real people, and this is real life. At times it feels absurd, at times contradictory, but always insightful. Welcome, Igor.
Thanks, Danny. It's always great being here. Thanks for waking up and coming here at 11:30. I probably would still be asleep right now, especially on a Sunday. It's a pleasure to see so many people, and I also want to thank some of the people that also worked on the film that are here: Matt Chan, Aaron Merkin, Albert Chin. It took a while to get here, but we're here. So enjoy the film, and we'll talk after.
We'll be back for Q&A. Thanks.
Thanks, Danny.
Igor, I'm so struck by the final scene where there's the anti-fascist play happening, and then you have this big collective pool at a tourist site, and it just seems to speak to a kind of, the question is being posed, will the happy people remember? And I think you spoke yesterday about a kind of amnesia that exists, so I'm wondering if you can speak to that a bit.
So for those people that don't know much about Bosnia, there was a war there in the 90s, and the actual peace treaty that was supposed to sort of end the war, it never really allowed the society to kind of continue. Like, there was never an attempt to actually have a proper reconciliation. There is no civic society in Bosnia. It's ethnic-based politics. So you are sort of like in this state of hoping that tomorrow is going to be better, but it's sort of nothing really changes. And nobody really is addressing that. Like, people are just leaving en masse. So there's 100,000 people leave Bosnia each year. Yeah, but I think the calculation is by 2050, the population is going to be reduced by like 48%.
Wow. Are there any questions out there? Yes, right in the front. I'll repeat.
Yeah, thanks. I really enjoyed the movie. It was very informative, entertaining. I was just wondering, could you speak a little about the decision to make it a sort of silent, so we don't see lips move and we listen to the voice. It was powerful for me because I think I even listen more proactively. But I wondered from your perspective how that went.
So the question is about the stillness of the movie, and especially the choice to leave often the voices that you hear off camera.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted the landscape to do a lot of the talking, and in sort of conventional approach, you would actually have the speakers present and animated as they talk. What I found interesting is that the landscape sort of contradicts some of the stuff that they're saying, and I found it really important to actually kind of display that. And it was an attempt to sort of have a dialogue with this landscape just as much as with the people, and that's why that was like a formal decision. Yeah, yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the question was about speaking about the landscapes, and there seems to be more of a move towards preservation. Do you want to?
More like manipulation, right, of the landscape, yeah.
Manipulation of the landscape. Okay, great.
like what's fascinating about that place is that certain people have so much power that they can actually, stop a river or like make the river, decrease 2 meters or whatever. Or in the case of the pyramids, like dig through these protected national monuments. So there's like a lot of actual archaeological sites all around Visoko, from like the Roman period, from the medieval Bosnian period. So there's this constant tension between the project itself and the authorities in the city. But the authorities in the city right now is a different party. It's a different political party at play. So before, the political party was very open to allowing these digs to happen and this manipulation to happen. So what I was struck by is that only the sort of the few powerful people are able to manipulate that landscape, and not necessarily for the better. It's just sort of for their own sort of projects, right?
And Igor, tell us about that, the kind of more new agey pyramid site. What made you choose to go there, and tell us about how you discovered it?
Well, that project has been around since 2006. It's got a lot of attention. They've had History Channel documentaries about it. They've had like spotlights in like various magazines. Like this person has been Toronto Star. He's been Toronto Sun. He's been the National Post. Like Semir Osmanagic. So anybody that sort of follows kind of like those TLC shows or whatever, like they actually had specials on this phenomenon. But like the scientific community does not believe in it, right? So because the scientific community doesn't believe in it, and because there's actually an affront with like the local Islamic community who do not want to touch the project anymore, they've had to rebrand. So the rebranding is sort of in this sort of new age approach where they're attracting a lot of people for these energy sessions inside these caves and
how's that working out with the local community?
I think some people are apprehensive, but like other people are supportive. So there's always gonna be a mix of like of the two. That project used to employ way more people. It used to employ hundreds and hundreds of people in the city. And right now, most of the sort of the tourists that come to like heal, to sort of find these energies, to kind of spend time in that space. And the space is really beautiful. Like it's like a very beautiful town. I mean, Bosnia is just like a gorgeous country. It's just fascinating how you have these sort of pockets of narratives and ideologies, and these tourist sites are supposed to kind of change their marketing strategy.
Yes.
Did you deal with governments at all? And did the tourism parts of governments help? And what was the difference between the Republic and the cantons and the municipalities and the federation? Did you deal with them at all?
Well, that's an interesting
question.
So
the question is all about the different levels of government there, which ones you dealt with, and were any of them different to deal with?
Yeah, so what's fascinating about Bosnia is that it's the most complicated governance setup in the world. No, it really is. It's like Franz Kafka's like trial. It is the most complicated, convoluted framework, where you have like about 4 tiers of government with various levels of autonomy. And so when you're in one region, the other region has like no say. So in answer to your question, the Republika Srpska, like when we were in Visegrad, like they were made aware right away. They even like interviewed us, put us in like the local paper. They claimed it was for our own protection. So like the city officials were aware that we were filming. For the other spaces, like the town of Medjugorje, like everybody sort of like that runs that youth festival, they give us a press pass. Like we were sort of just part of like this pool of people that are already filming. There was like hundreds of people filming these events. And for the what was the other one? Yeah, for Tuzla, they were really open. Like that was the mayor of the town. Like the guy you see at the beginning, he's the mayor of the town. So they were all aware that we were there. So the only kind of The place that I had to be the most sensitive to was Visegrad, because in Visegrad they just didn't want to talk about the war and what was done in that space. So
Which was done? What
there
was
was
done?
ethnic cleansing that happened in Visegrad. That was just like a taboo. Like you cannot mention it. Like
Did anyone speak about it at all?
off the record, one person did. I'm not gonna say who, but like off the record, they spoke of like the brutality there and how like you just have war criminals walking around unchecked. And we ran into some of them. So it was that part was a little apprehensive when you realized who you ran into. And then like through a Google search, you realize that, they've been accused of killing like 30, 40 people. Yeah.
Wow, I just can't imagine what that does to a place, especially if people are not speaking about it anymore, and the impact.
But that's why you get these narratives, because they don't talk about what's actually real. They just kind of come up with these various ways of avoiding it.
And how do you feel like that relates to like the mass exodus in the country?
I think that anybody with a sort of a sense of self or kind of like a reason, like a kind of reason with the present situation, realize that there isn't really much they can do to change the system, because the system was imposed in many ways. So like I don't see like a grassroots movement forming to like change the country. I think like all of the changes in that country always happen from external forces, and I think that will continue to be the place. The idea that runs the place. So I feel like there is hope in like creating dialogues, but I'm not sure how much change is gonna, like right now the situation has never been worse since the 90s.
Wow.
Because of like the politics in the region are influenced by like Putin and Erdogan and the EU.
Sure.
So it's sort of like right in that trifecta of those powers. Yeah.
A question here.
Well, I think the film is really very powerful. But I think the film is more powerful on the people that escape from that country, from that culture, because they know all the context that the film will stay. And I think a lot of explanation that you are giving here, you are missing from the movie. Example, I think the major point should be everybody who is interested about that problem, we can go to see that. But the location of Bosnia and Herzegovina and what we did actually, starting from Međimurje, going to Visegrad, Tuzla, and Pristina, that is three major points of Bosnia. And I think it's very, very impressive how did you do that. And I think especially about Visegrad, for me, looking on the film, language and everything, I think that is much more powerful. But if, for example, information about some of the people, in the movie that is always titled as Professor Kustrica, and nobody, no information about who is Kustrica.
Well, I think that...
So hold on, I just want to paraphrase. The question is about why did you choose not to provide context or information about the certain places and people in sort of possibly a more didactic way, so that those that don't understand the context would know?
It was purposeful. I actually just wanted to focus on tourism. If you wanted to read into these other hidden elements, you were free to do that. It's in the press kit. Some of it is on the website. So the idea is to sort of make a piece that kind of addresses the sort of the blindness by which we as people, when we travel other countries, blindly follow, a tour guide. We don't actually even ask what we're being asked to, participate in. And that's sort of like the idea that I was playing with. I wanted you guys to sort of go on this journey and then realize, like, wait a minute, there's stuff here that's a bit odd, and like kind of have you question that, but not just in Bosnia, in whether it's in Canada, when you're going to like commemorate like the prime ministers of this country and just ignore all the evils that they committed. in the creation of this particular country, right? So that's sort of the idea that I was playing with.
Okay, we have a question down here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more at the back. Were there any really big tourist sites in Bosnia that weren't in the movie?
Yeah, there's a few other sites that are becoming bigger, but like they're sort of like more like natural tourism or rafting and whatnot. Like it's like a big rafting country. It's like a lot of canyons and stuff, but like they didn't have like that political sort of angle. There's a few sites they're sort of like have sprung up recently around like Bosniak nationalism and like the sort of like reimaginings of these old of these old sort of like Turkish ceremonies that was made aware of while I was making this film. So it would have been interesting to actually explore something like that. But because some of that kind of came out in the Visoko section, I felt like it might have been a bit redundant. But when I was making the film, the most of these sites I explored, like I had some reference. Either I've been there before, or I read about the spaces. So I did like a preliminary visit to see how they would work, and I felt that they all represent like an ideological sort of idea, not just like a tourist site. So because they all had like a very specific ideology at play, I felt like having, you know, the various forms of nationalism plus sort of like this sort of socialist, Yugo-nostalgic approach to remembering a space to all be equally problematic in some respect, in terms of like how they don't actually create dialogue between the people there. They sort of just make everybody pause and not continue talking.
Thanks so much, Igor. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.